Hello and welcome. We are so pleased to have so many of you tune in today. My name is Juliette Vo, your Education and Events Chair. As we get started, as we get ready to start the webinar, I'd like to take a moment to address the protocols for the meeting. All Zoom viewers are on mute throughout the entirety of the presentation. If you're dialing into the call, please be sure to mute yourself. Questions can be asked throughout the presentation, but won't be answered until Q&A period at the end of the session. The chat feature will not be monitored during the presentation, but questions can be answered through the Q&A box. Please remember, this is a professional setting and recorded session. Please conduct yourself accordingly. If your question is not answered to your satisfaction through the Q&A, you may reach out directly to the presenter at the end of the presentation via email or phone. Now, I'd like to introduce our own SFAR CEO, Walt Bukowski.
Well, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well and surviving the pandemic, and probably glad to be back out on the streets and working to a degree, and making sure we observe all protocols. The SFAR office will be back open June 1st. We have done some rearranging and have things pretty much set up there, so we're looking forward to getting back together with you all. And I have to say that over 2,000 people have attended webinars since we've been shut down, and I think that's just tremendous, and I compliment you all. Our speaker today is a friend of mine named Steve Murray. Steve's the president and co-founder of RealTrends. He's probably the leading organization in real estate research. He's been doing this a little longer than I've been in the business, 43 years. So he still looks a lot better than me too in the whole thing. I think RealTrends is the Bible to like 54,000 realtors, and every week like 500 CEOs, or every year 500 CEOs attend RealTrends conference. The only reason only 500 attend is that's the limit of the attendance on there. He does a lot of consumer reports. His RealTrends is published every year. It has the best rankings of brokerages in the country. And he also is picked up by the Wall Street Journal and a bunch of other people for his data he's always looked at. Steve also works directly with The reason why I want him, he works directly with realtors. Part of his plan, part of his game plan, and part of what he does is he helps on mergers, acquisitions, and also in advising real estate companies as to how to make money, get back into business. And I thought it was pretty, he did a book in 2014 called Game Changers, Unfounded Fears for the Future. I bet the pandemic isn't in there, but it's probably going to be a whole chapter in his next book. Yeah. Steve has over 3,200 clients in these past couple of years. He participated in over $12.1 billion in mergers and acquisitions with real estate companies. He also works at MLSs. I work with Steve on some different things. And frankly, he's a good friend, and I think has a lot of good information. So without further ado, and making his head any bigger, Mr. Steve Murray.
Walt, you're too kind, and Julia, thank you for having me. So good afternoon to everyone. Good morning, I guess, in the Bay Area. So yeah, this is 44th year in the industry, and this is my 5th recession that I've been through in the housing market, and I'm going to get back to why that's important in a minute. But before I go to the 2 ways you can not only survive, but end up with a far stronger business when this kind of gets by us, which I'm going to get to in a minute, our industry is so full of myths that are meant to scare real estate professionals, that are meant to disrupt them, that I always want to address that first, because I just like ending the nonsense, so to speak. So among the research we do at RealTrends is we hire a company called Harris Insights about every 5 years to do our own recent buyer and seller research around the US to find out what's going on. We've been doing it for almost 20 years now. The last time we did this research was in 2000, towards the middle of 2018. We go out to find out what's going on with housing consumers. That's our focus. So let me share a few things with you. Myth number 1, consumers don't need agents like they used to. With technology and big data, they don't need them. Well, 90% of all buyers and sellers in 2018 used an agent to buy or sell a home. There was very little variation around the country. And in fact, I can tell you the more educated and the wealthier, the higher percentages they used agents to buy and sell a home. So myth number one, gone. Myth number two, millennials and Gen X will use smart devices. They won't use agents. Will explain to me why in 2018, 92% of millennials and Gen X used an agent when they bought or sold a home in those times. Oh, by the way, as an aside, you remember the other myth that they weren't going to own homes? You know, millennials and Gen X, they don't want to own homes because they're not like their parents and the grandparents. Well, if you look at the best research on this, I mean, in addition to like the normal industry guys, the realtors, the mortgage bankers, the builders, Pew Research, PEW Research, go look at their research or go look at the Harvard research on attitudes towards home ownership by millennial, Gen X, and even Gen Z. The desire to own one's castle is unabated. It doesn't matter what the generations are. All right, so there's a bunch of, let's just blow those out, okay? Oh, last, remember that myth that technology companies are going to take over how consumers find their agent? Well, in our research in 2018, 2/3 of the consumers found their agent because they know one or someone they know referred them. That hasn't changed in 30 years. Now, let me share just a couple other things from that research. We asked consumers what services provided by agents are the most important to you. By the way, their answers have been the same for 20 years. Number one, they depend on agents to negotiate the transaction for them. That's it's been at the very top since the first time we did it in 2001. By the way, the third most important is navigating the process. How do we do this? Okay. One last thing that's important, because this circles around to the two suggested best practices. When we ask consumers, what is most important about your interaction with an agent? Not the services the agent provides, but the attributes of that agent. Number one, ever since we started doing this research, they want to have a trusted relationship with their agent. They want to trust them. Now, why is this important? What I've shared with you, though. First, all the myths and the garbage that people have been printing and publishing for 20 years about the demise of agents and brokerage companies, it's just not supported by what consumers say. So we'll leave it to others to debate why those firms keep thinking the industry can do without you, because it's wrong. So everything I just shared with you, trust, negotiation, navigation of the process, still 2/3 of people, they choose an agent because they know one or someone referred them. All of those things talk about the importance of relationships with your customers and your clients. To be able to be a trusted advisor, to help negotiate, to help navigate, to be there when they reach out, that's all stuff that machines can't do, because bottom line, machines don't care about relationships and they don't care about empathy. And the greatest attribute good agents have, yes, they have great market knowledge and great negotiating skill, but the best agents also have empathy, and they understand that every client and customer is going to be a little bit different from the other, and it's not always about the numbers. All right, enough said about that. Let me share with you the two things that I have noted, having had a front row seat at the head of a national real estate network in the 1980-82 downturn, and the editor, co-editor, and founder of Real Trends in the 88 to 92 downturn and the 2000-2001 downturn, the 06-09 downturn. Frankly, I'd hoped to be retired before another one came, but obviously that hasn't worked out. Now I have to postpone any thought because I gotta get through this first, like everybody else. And we will get through this. What are the two things the best agents and brokers in the country did? And by the way, they both did the same two things to get through, not only get through, but actually come out stronger. Number one, if you're an agent or you're a team, you need to get closer to your clients and customers, both current and past. And I guess we could say future. What do I mean by that? I will tell you exactly what I mean, and then you adapt it for yourself. I think it's great to use text and social media and Zoom calls and email. It's all great. It all has its place. But right now, in these times, the most important thing you can do is reach out with that old-fashioned telephone and actually call someone up and just ask them how they're doing. Just ask them how they're doing. Now, I will give you an example. Walt mentioned I do mergers and acquisitions, which means I'm a listing agent. I just happen to list and sell residential brokerage companies. And I've been doing that for 33 years. I mean, notable transactions I represented people on in Northern California in the last few years. We represented Paragon. We represented Alon Pinnell. We represented Hill and Company, among others. So I'm a listing agent. What I did 6 weeks ago, I'm getting ready to do it again, is I called all my family members first to make sure they were doing well, including cousins I haven't talked to in years, and my crazy uncle, who it's hard to talk to him. I called my friends. I mean, I don't have a ton, but I have enough to want to call them and talk to them and reconnect and ask them how they're doing and how their families are. And is there anything I can do for them? And then I called 50 past clients and customers, half of whom I sold their companies. They're not even active in our business anymore. I did not call them for referrals. I did not call them to see if I could do business stuff for them. I called to ask them how they were, how times were treating them. Was there anything I could do for them? Now, I will tell you two things. One, it took a lot of time. It took a couple days to reach all those people, you can imagine, because none of those ended up being short conversations. I will tell you that I received back far more from their comments back and their thankfulness and their appreciation that I was able to convey in my call to them. Some of them just flat out, nobody called to ask them. Nobody called to ask. So there's a great opportunity for you to get back into the habit, which we used to have a long time ago, of reaching out and staying in touch with people. And use your own way to do it. I'm suggesting the phone because it's personal. It's most personal. We can't all have a big group meeting right now, and it's probably, you don't want to try to meet them all individually because we all have to distance. We all know that. That's being safe. But find your own way to reach out and get closer to your family, friends, and your past clients and customers, and embed that new habit so that you don't ever forget it going forward. And for brokerage companies, I talk to them about doing that with their agents and their staff. It's amazing how many of us just forget to do that. We get busy with all the things we get busy doing. Okay? That's number one. Number two, even now, preserve capital. Preserve cash. Anything you don't need to spend, don't spend it. Anything not pertaining to building your personal family's finances or your business finances, don't spend it right now. There'll be an opportunity to do that later. And again, we say this to agents and teams, and I presented in front of both groups over the last 5 to 6 weeks. It doesn't matter what form your business is. Right now, you'd be amazed the stuff been working with some clients to go through their general ledger, their QuickBooks or Quicken, their checkbook, for God's sake, in a couple cases. And you just go through line item and you go, what is that for? I mean, the best example I can tell you, this is on me. We have a small company here. There's 8 people in about 2,000 square feet. Scott and I, my VP, we did this about 5, 6 weeks ago. We found out I was paying for 2 water coolers. We only have one. It's only $35 a month, but why would I waste $35 a month? And we're a little company. We're a couple $1 million, $2 to $3 million in revenue a year. We found $12,000, $14,000 of stuff. We'd already done it a year ago, so the real big stuff we'd already taken care of. I kid some brokers. I don't know how many are listening in, but I worked with a broker last week, 6 offices and about 400 agents. They were spending $28,000 a year on bottled water and coffee. Now, that's a nice thing to have for their agents and staff, but it's not absolutely required right now. It's not. So get closer to your customers, your family, and your friends, and preserve your cash and your capital. Now, having said those 2 sections, some of the questions I get asked frequently are, so, what's it look like? Now, I've been tracking, I have access to showing information for 44 of the 50 states, and I've been watching it for 6 weeks. And I will tell you that 6 weeks ago, I know in California what it was like. It was horrible. It was horrifying. In Colorado, I live in Colorado, just south of Denver. Agents, no showings were allowed. And their business was just grinding to a halt. I mean, it's really good to use virtual tours. It's really good to do all these things. And probably we won't go back 100% to doing things the way we used to do them. But this is still a personal business. It's still a personal business. And it's always going to be. What about the recovery? Right? We get asked that frequently. Now, I'm not as smart as the chairman of the Fed or the president of the United States or the governor of California or all these other people. I never claimed to be as smart as those people. But I've also been looking at doing this and in this industry 44 years. And so here's what I have to share. We're going to recover strongly now. And I think in California, I've seen showings have come up enormously in the last 3 weeks or so. I think that's right. I haven't looked at it this morning. It's going to continue, but everybody seems to be getting back to about 80% of where the showing levels were at this time last year. Almost every state. That's where the agents are allowed to show. I think they're all open now. Pennsylvania and New York may be the sole holdouts yet. I'm not sure. They were a couple days ago. We're likely to get back to about 80%, 75%, 70, 75, 80% of where we were last year. I don't think we can get much out of that or above that for the foreseeable future. That could be 6 to 18 months because we now have 35 million unemployed fellow citizens. And that doesn't count really the small business people who are still dreaming that they're going to be able to hold on, many of whom won't be able to. Many of whom won't. Even with the PPP and the other benefit programs and all the other money that's being pumped out to try to save people's jobs and lives and businesses, we're going to have 35 million unemployed Americans. In fact, we hit that this morning. You can't have a full housing recovery with an entire 20% of the working population is out of work. Now, You hear the experts talking, and this is going to turn the corner in the next few months and start coming back. And I have no reason to doubt them. But those who say, I think finally this whole storyline a month or 6 weeks ago of a V-shaped recovery, I didn't buy that for a minute. I mean, I'm just a small business guy, but we engage with you and your peers every day, dozens of times a day, and I tend to read a lot about the economy and finance and mortgage markets. That's just my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we bounce back to 85% of where we were a year ago. And maybe that's where it is, but we can't get all the way back with that kind of unemployment in our country. We still have the same inventory problems we had before this started. In Denver, Colorado, where I live, anything under 500 is gone, just snapped up within a day or two or three. Between 500 and 950,000, it's still a very strong market. Inventory is still short. Above $1 million, which for us is a really nice luxury home, is where we see inventory starting to build. Because the last thing to tell you that hurts the total recovery is in all the prior recessions, I have noted that the very high end, that top 10% of buyers and sellers, after a recession, they tend to hibernate for 10 to 18 months. They just go inactive because many of them it's discretionary purchases. Now, I don't know exactly where that level is in San Francisco or the Bay Area there, but those are two implications for the recovery. I only have one other thing that I'd like to share this morning. And because I've seen it happening in a few places around the country, we've all, unfortunately, probably seen some of it. But those of you who are listening in on this, I don't know what your protocols are in California for doing business, for showing property, but whatever those protocols are, please do not treat them flippantly or with disdain or be dismissive. The sooner we get people to adhere to these protocols and the more safe we keep ourselves and our clients and customers, and the more we get people to do that, the likelihood is the faster the economy can recover. Now, I mean, and I've talked to people on phone calls, well, we don't really have to do that. Please don't do that. You owe it to yourself and to your buyers and to your sellers to take the lead in being safe and practice the protocols to keep them safe as well. It's important that we all do that right now. The only other comment I want to offer is, and I've said this to realtors all over the United States, if any of you ever wondered why you pay realtor dues to the local and state associations, well, let me tell you, without them fighting the battle for you to be able to do business, you might not be doing it even right now. And that goes for Walt and his team, and that goes for Joel Singer and his team, and it goes for Bob Goldberg at NAR and his team, because without NAR fighting in Washington, independent contractor real estate agents, unlikely that they would have gotten access to unemployment insurance. So if you think to take a moment and drop an email or a note or just a voicemail to Walt or to the Joel and his team, it'd be a good time to do that. But because all over the country, I promise you, because I'm in touch with 100 or more of those men and women frequently, they look like they've been through like trench warfare. I mean, fighting with the elected officials to try to keep real estate agents able to work. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, Juliet. Well, I don't see a question, but thank you all for your comments.
Yes, Walt?
I appreciate it, Steve. I guess there's always, as everybody's getting back to work, and I appreciate the comments on making sure you get a hold of your family, get a hold of your customers, and not just saying, "Hey, you ready to sell now?" but just saying how they are, and that personal touch is, I think, something that'll be big. You just put a book out on evaluating brokers, and what's your best advice you're giving to brokers now on restarting? I know I can say, okay, don't buy as many water coolers and stuff, but what are you saying to them on really how to restart, how to kickstart, but to do it the right way?
I think that much like a lot of other industries, we did a survey, and we had 125 brokers respond just a couple weeks ago about what they now see in the future. What changes are they going to make? And this goes for agents and brokers both. I think one thing we've learned through all of this, we have here, I don't know that I have 5 employees that are ever going to want to come back and work in the office. And that's okay. I mean, they live within 5 miles of here, and it's not a bad commute, but they're working very effectively, and they come in now and then, but they're doing fine. I think, let's put it this way. I'm glad I don't own the office. I used to own the building I'm in. We sold it, my partners and I, 2 years ago. I am so happy not to be a commercial space owner right now, because this place now is a third empty, and I know most of these companies, they're not coming back. I think that brokers, where I'm going, Walt, I think a lot of the brokers are going to go more virtual, and they're going to reduce their office footprints. How much space they're going to change. They might still have locations, but they'll be smaller and maybe more open formats with some private meeting spaces, but 8, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, 40,000. You look at what's happening with people like Realty Brokerage Group and Compass, and they're reducing employment and they're closing offices. And that's going to be a clear trend for the next year and a half to 2.
Okay, well, I think, and I think Twitter just said no employees have to come in anymore. And I hate to say this because my employee's been operating so darn effectively, 2,000 people through programs. I won't even get into politics in San Francisco. With Jay Chang on here would be different. So are you looking at now, let's talk about that, because we're in a big city here in San Francisco. Do you think that all the changes here now are going to impact on commercial real estate?
I'm no expert in commercial real estate, but and I know there's been a lot written in the Wall Street Journal and Barron's and The Economist about this. This goes for retail malls too. But I mean, I have to ask a big question, right? If I have 500 employees and I'm in a building that's 45 stories tall, how actually are you going to do distancing in elevators?
Okay.
And by one other thing I didn't say, and in case somebody asked it, and this is just based on reading and listening to the experts. There are people out there who think that we are going to get a cure for COVID-19. No, this is going to be like influenza. It's going to be around for a long, 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 long time. And we'll have treatments and we'll have vaccines, and we'll learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't just disappear.
No.
A virus like this. It doesn't just disappear. And so I think, well, based on that, if that's the case, and this is a little bit more contagious than the flu is what I'm reading, is that I think you're going to see a real change. By the way, the other thing we note is that talking to 2 of the largest farm and ranch brokers, rural property marketing companies in the country, their business is through the roof.
That was going to be my next question, because I've seen some comments by some of the pundits out there that are saying that the new suburbanism is coming up.
Yeah.
But I don't know, so think about this though. We still have more people that live in the city and take buses down to Facebook and Google because they want to be in the city.
I
So
know.
I think there's still some of that, but
Oh yeah.
how much of that is going to exist when suddenly 50% of your retail and restaurants close down, and we don't know how long it's going to be before they get back. So I think we're in for
Oh
a different time here in San Francisco, but I
yeah.
can see it in some other areas, and
Denver will be no different. I mean, when Denver 25 years ago, when downtown Denver started to come back and they built the ball field and people started going down, and now you build housing and then the restaurants and the stores supported it, and they're one of the two or three places that are pretty much still under, safe. I don't think it's shelter at home anymore. It's safe at home, which is a little bit more relaxed, but there's still down there. There's no restaurants and bars and, people around here. This town is Denver Bronco Nutsville. I mean, people here are like crazy about, and they're going, oh yeah, we're going to have the Bronco. I said, well, you really think 65,000 people are going to crowd into a stadium 3 months from now, 4 months from now? I don't know, Walt. I think there's a whole bunch of things we're going to be adapting. But I think for our industry, Walt, I think you're going to see fewer and more open designed offices. But I just think agents are going to start. They've now learned how to work virtually.
so
The only guys I feel sad for are the people that used to print their contracts on paper forms and sign them that way.
all right, anybody out there listening, don't take offense.
No, I mean,
Well, I think that one of the other things to look at, and I know we're seeing this, the use of technology now, how much technology is coming in, and frankly, it's how do you find the pretenders from the real stuff? And I don't know about you, but I was hit with 5 people wanted to join me on Facebook today, and they're all people I was already members with. So I know that and I'm sure everybody's seen. I know there's been a couple names gone around in San Francisco, the guys that is calling constantly and wanting homeowners docs and all this stuff, and he's not a valid person. But how much this is going to have a big impact on technology, and the brokers, the brokers have been struggling for a while. I know a couple of companies now call themselves technology companies.
right,
I think is ludicrous personally.
right.
But I think where's the impact come with technology, and where do you see the next stuff coming from?
There's two things, and I've written a little bit about one. The other one is we'll call it recent learning. The first one is that I think brokerage companies and agents, and again, this is front row seat for a long time. Historically, you have all kinds of, back office, sales management, CRM, transaction management, on and on and on and on. And our industry has this just nasty historical habit of we deal with tech firms and we tell them how to customize it to make it fit us. When some of these tech platforms are actually really thoughtful and done well. And what we have to start doing now as an industry is what we have to do is adapt our business processes to the available technology.
Well, and I think that's critical, because sometimes we're always looking to adapt the technology to what we do.
Right.
And sometimes the technology can't make that final leap.
No.
And sometimes it means having to adapt how you're doing business and how you operate. So I think that's good advice when you're looking at software. One, what's it going to do for you?
Right.
Secondarily, are you adapting to it, or is it adapting to you? And if you have to adapt it, what does it mean you have to do?
Well, and what this has caused is massive complexity among the providers and huge cost increases, because Walt, you and I know this, everybody who wants data feeds from MLSs until, recent times, they had to write a different interface for every MLS in the country.
Well, as I ran Point Two for a number of years, and J. Pepper Martins was my manager there, we had to write every MLS and to be able to get it in. Resto, the Real Estate Standards Organization, has really resolved that.
Right, that's right, until recent times. All right, so here's the other thing. I think we have a chance through all this and I don't know if anybody's working on it. I know we have started to integrate better with mortgage, title, brokerage, escrow. Because all of a sudden we had to. For anybody to get any business done, online notaries, right? Where'd that come from, right? How fast did that get permitted?
Yeah.
In normal times, how long would it have taken through a normal regulatory process to get that approved?
The CAR board of directors debated that for an entire meeting. I'm not sure what the action was. As soon as the pandemic came, it was approved in one day.
It was approved. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and I was talking, in fact, to somebody who's got a lot of money, big money in some of the big real estate tech firms. And he was really just whacking me about our industry's inefficient and blah, 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 blah. I said, you know what our biggest problem is that the various state and federal regulators will not let the title, settlement services, mortgage, and brokerage industries integrate their platforms.
Yeah. Well, that's been, and that we've
30-year problem.
And it runs afoul of the laws all the time. There's still certain ways to get around some of it, but
right.
It is,
right.
In the full service offering. Juliet?
Yeah, the next big project, and it's going to get forced, I think, by the fact that those who don't want to play with this effort are going to get left, right? But I think I read bits and pieces about the title guys and the mortgage guys and the brokerage guys. How do we integrate a platform so that this really truly is a platform that from start to finish, we can move the data that needs to be moved, protect its security and its privacy. So I think that's an outcome of this, because it's got to be more mobile now. If I'm a virtual agent, I'm not going to drive and meet a title guy. I'm not going to drive and meet a mortgage banker. I want to Zoom them, right? Or Google Hangouts or Facebook. I want to get to know them. I want to interact, but I want that data moved. Here, I'm sending you the data, and here I want you to get this done. I think we just all learned that it's really good to have times to get together, but productive agents, they like to be with other productive agents. There's no question about that. But I think in big metro areas, shoot the commute times and drive times and Uber times, it's craziness. So people go, look, if I don't have to do that, I just want to do my business. If I can do it this way, I'm going to do it this way. If I need to do Matterport or other kind of virtual tours as the intro, so people can see more than they've been able to see, I think the percent, Walt, of people, agents, top agents using virtual tours is going to go up considerably.
Yeah. Juliet, I see you had something.
Yes. So, Steve, are you ready for some questions?
Sure.
Okay. First one comes from Mark, and his question is, do you think that this pandemic will increase the preference for single-family residents, especially millennials are starting to have children also?
Yes. I don't have any question about it. And because not only are we seeing, if you look at, go back, you can get it, go to Harris, the Harris poll and Harris Insights of just 2 weeks ago. And they had whole national surveys of people's attitudes towards, by the way, one study was about their attitudes towards going back to restaurants and stores. But another one was about housing preference. And they answer right to that point, Juliet. They talk about millennials have already started the process of many of them of moving out of urban cores out to suburban areas.
Thank you, Steve. So another question is, do you see a correction coming, as in percentage or dollar signs in the decline?
I think they're probably asking about the people saying we're going to have a resurgence in the late summer or fall, and what will that do? I don't know. I really don't know. That's why you heard me say I'm going to do my part to tell agents you can have an impact on this by obeying the protocols to keep yourself safe and keep your clients and customers. If we get everybody just stay calm. If they say you can open your restaurant for 25% and you can manage that, then do it. If you can't, then don't open. Right? I mean, anybody who doesn't take it seriously is not thinking clearly.
Well, and I think we have the right protocols to say for real estate. You
Yeah.
make sure your hands are clean,
Yeah.
make sure you're only taking one couple through, make sure the booties are on. I think we've been putting that out since the get-go. Mark's done
Yeah.
some videos on that.
Yeah. I mean, we had right south of me, 5 miles from me, you may have seen in the news, somebody opened a restaurant down in Castle Rock, Colorado, and hundreds of people jammed the place. Now, by the way, they shut the restaurant down and revoked her license and fined her. It wasn't just that, and by the way, there was no safety going on there at all. And there are other restaurant people really nearby that place who were playing by the rules. So how does it make them feel? Right? So I don't know though, Juliet. I wish I knew, but that's not one I would hazard a guess on. I pray every day that, we'll get this and keep this as much under control as possible. And that people just be smart. Okay. If you don't think much of yourself, then think about everybody else. Oh, for a change.
So Steve, we have a question from John, and it's a little bit two-part. Given changes in use of workspace, where is commercial real estate going, and what other changes to real estate? And do you think companies like WeWork will benefit as business use less real estate per capita?
I said just a little bit ago, I'm glad I don't own an office building anymore. I really do think there's going to be a lot of fundamental change in the use of office space. I mean, the funniest part is I talked to I'm working on a couple of deals that involve some tech guys and some real estate guys in Seattle. None of them are in Seattle. They're all over in Idaho. And they've been there for 6 weeks and they're running their companies and none of their people are in their offices. And they say, our companies are working just fine. I don't think that I don't say it stays this remote, but I don't think a lot of companies are going to go back to just this 70-year habit of just packing people into office space.
Yeah, and that's a concern that I think I've heard from many places.
Yeah.
That's the $64,000 question right now, is what's going to happen. And like I said, I think it was Twitter just said nobody has to come back ever. And I think Google was talking about 2021.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of tells you there might be a trend coming up here.
Yeah, and Juliet, I answered a little bit before, but I think the real estate office of the future. And it's hard to say one size fits all. And I've been to many that are what I would consider already there, which is 3 or 4 conference rooms if an agent needs to meet clients. There might be, and then a large kind of open space with really strong Wi-Fi, just far more casual, where people can bring a laptop in and they can do their work and they can print stuff if they need to print stuff. We, of course, won't be printing much stuff anymore. Or they can pick up supplies if they need that. But, we've known for some time in our industry that brokers of 20 years ago built, 12, 15,000 square foot real estate offices to house 60 agents, and there were all these nice private offices, and the agents were in the office 3 or 4 hours a week. And I have a lot of clients who are going, okay, I give up. It turns out they don't need the office. They haven't needed it for a long time. I'll give them a place to use a conference room or to come work if they need to come work or stop and see. I have one client has 30 offices like that, one of the best brokers in the country. They have 30 offices like that, one key fob, agent can get into, and this isn't a major downtown, mainly metro. One key fob gets them into any office. They happen to be convenient. All the equipment's the same, And so we work, in a matter of fact, now not that company per se, but companies like them, I think there'll be a good market for that.
Well, Steve, with that,
I'm old enough, and I know you are, Steve, too, to remember that brokerage used to have a desk for every single agent, and the top producers are the ones who got their own office, and then you had a certain desk just available for people on call at that time. And that office of the past, I remember them from my starting days, won't say what year that was, to now is dramatically different. I mean, I think some of the real estate companies are all virtual now. And I'm not sure about that business model, how that works. And I think everybody's trying different things.
Yeah.
I think that we're learning something dramatic here. One, commercial real estate, I wouldn't want to be owning a lot right now. I don't know if I want to own rental property in San Francisco. The second thing is that there's going to be some changes coming up. We don't know if it's going to be a new urbanism or a new suburbanism coming up. And I think there's probably going to be a rush to technology. And I advise everybody to make sure, one, you're not changing. Either if you have to change your business, no, you have to, or you have to take a good look at it to make sure that what you're doing works. Do you really need it? Is there other stuff that's being provided? And again, look at a lot of the things we provide through the MLS that you're including your fees, you don't have to pay any extra for, or what your broker's providing or has. And when you do some mashups of what you have available to you now, and now's a great time to be learning all that stuff, I think you might be ready to make that change into the future.
yes. So Steve, going back to what you just spoke about, Paula has a question is, what does the new real estate brokerage look like in your opinion, as in office? You kind of talked about that. And her second part is, what effects do you see on commission if we're in this new virtual world?
Okay. First, parroting off or playing off something Walt said, I don't think there's any one kind of new brokerage company. We have said for years that we see ultimately kind of a bifurcation between a Nordstrom type company on one side and a Walmart company on the other, and neither is right or wrong, but they're different in their approach to what services and value they provide and environment that they provide to agents. And there will be a few really good Nordstrom type companies, and there'll be a few really good Walmart type companies. Just don't get caught in the middle. You're going to have to differ. Who are we and what's our aim and what's our goal? I mean, it's like I tell people, there's a company here in Denver called Kentwood, and Kentwood's been around for 40 years. And to work at Kentwood, if you're in our town, if you're not doing $5 or $6 million a year, there's no place for you here. And until recently, like they had this crazy dress code. Men wore coats and ties to work. And the tremendous marketing support. By the way, they have private offices because these are all really top producers and people use them. And that's Kentwood. 3 offices, 170 agents doing, $3 billion in sales in a market where the average price is $420. Now that company they're going to be fine because they know who they are. This is who we are. And we will continue to attract people that want to live and work in an environment of only top flight, 100% professional people. But then one of the biggest firms in our state is HomeSmart. They have, I don't know what the number is, 2,500 to 3,000 agents in the Front Range of Colorado, and they have no private offices available for them. They're all service centers for the most part, and it's very low cost. And the only thing the company really offers is a la carte technology, a la carte marketing, a la carte whatever, training. And that works fine for them. They're very successful and they're very profitable. So there's not one size fits all, but the one true thing is that I think that we will be more and more absolutely 100% processing transactions online. I mean, it sounds kind of quaint to think there are people still using paper, but I know there are. I did 3 transactions last year. It had been years since a decade since I'd done some transactions. I sold a rental property. My wife and I sold our big home and downsized to a smaller home, and it was all done online with digital signatures. That's the slickest thing since sliced bread. I mean, who invented that? I mean, that is, I click, oh, yeah, click, oh, good, that's it. The only thing that kind of got me is, okay, we did all that. Why do I still have to go to a title company for a closing? Because of the state regulations that require it. And the banking regulations say, I got to see you in person to make you a mortgage loan. Really? I mean, the bank who gave me the loan last year, let's see, I'm a tier 1 client according to them, and I've been banking with them for 25 years. Do they think they know who I am? So why did I have to drive 45 minutes to do that? I think that kind of stuff is going to start changing.
Steve, good point. So fun fact, we have 2 more questions for you, but a fun fact is Patricia says that New York Times posted a picture, shows elevator has 3 squares. So each person gets to stand within that square. So there you go with elevators.
I can't wait till they try to fill an 80-story office building and empty it with 3 squares in each elevator.
So Joel
I
has
think
a question.
what we need to have is Star Trek technology. It just beams you to a place, right? It just beams you right there.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah, working on it. Yeah, somebody in San Francisco is working on that. I know that.
So Steve, we have 2 more questions. Joel says, traditionally open house are the key way new agents build their business. With no open houses, perhaps for the rest of the year, how do you suggest new agents approach building a business? Great question.
So there are all kinds of ways. Okay. Personal experience. I have an older sister. She was a corporate brand development, product development, senior executive with many companies. And you eat stuff that my sister invented, like Entenmann's and Sun Chips and stuff like that. Well, I mean, some of you eat that stuff. She started her practice. She and her husband retired from their last assignment, moved to a Sunbelt market after a year sitting around. She got a real estate license, and she was doing marketing. And she was not getting very far with her social media and her website and all this, which is what she knew how to do really well for consumer products. And she finally hired a coach, and the coach said, you need to put yourself in a position every day that you are talking to your neighbors and friends and people at church and people at the stores you go to and the garden centers you get your plants, and you take your business cards and try to engage 5 to 6 people a day you don't know in a brief discussion of, hi, how are you? And by the way, I'm a real estate agent. I'd like to give you my card. If you ever need to do something in housing, I'd enjoy. And let me fast forward. 8 months later, she's doing 18 to 20 transactions a year. This is not a millennial. This is an aging baby boomer who had to learn a whole new skill of getting in front of people and saying, I am a professional real estate agent. And now she's doing all the business she wants to do. That's one example. Now, I'm not suggesting you do this in San Francisco, but I met a guy a couple of years, more than a couple of years ago, back after the last downturn in a Midwest market, a medium-sized market. This guy lost his wife and she left him with 6 kids, $1,000 in the bank, and a house and a real estate license. He didn't have the time to do sphere of influence marketing. So what did he do? He went out and cold called expireds and FSBOs. And at the end of his first year, he did 45 transactions. Open house is just one way to get in front of prospective people. Now I'm not suggesting you could like walk neighborhood. I suppose you could walk neighborhoods in San Francisco. Maybe you don't, not right now. But you know what? There's people. I met 2 women down in Pasadena a couple of years ago, and they built their whole business. The 2 of them walking neighborhoods. The 2 of them walked them together. for safety, security, and they were very bright, very attractive, and they fed off each other's energy, and they built a practice doing 30, 35 million in sales a year.
And that's, and again, that's the old tried and true. We started that when I first got into business. I was licensed in 1978.
Yeah.
One of the other things is you got to look at the technology that's available to you. And one of the services we have now through MLS, the basic is Remind. And one of the things Remind does, you can search a neighborhood, you can find how long somebody's owned the property, how much money they owe on the property, what their age is. So if they owe nothing on the property and they're 75, maybe that's your target market. Maybe it's somebody that's missed for, a lot of this information is available. So it's a matter of getting that information. And we used to call it the rules of 8, which is a simulate, manipulate, and disseminate. And you simulate all that and you manipulate it to get your target what you want, and then disseminate by calling them and getting a hold of them that way. So, and Remind's one of the services we have available in MLS that does that. I think you have to do some upgrades.
Yeah.
But,
and it could be a year and a half. I don't know. 2 years. It could be open houses will be permitted again with some protocols as to how you do it. I mean, you could do open houses. You just can't have all the people in there at one time.
Well, you also on a virtual tour, you also become like a newscaster. Well, not newscaster, maybe a reporter, but polish up. Go to a speaking class. Go to a speaking class so your speeches aren't filled with ums and ahs and pauses and whatever. And so you're not doing like the Geico lizard and laughing and doing that stuff in the middle of it, but you're understanding how to speak, how to be engaging, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to jump off. So I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Walt, thank you for having me, Walt.
Thanks for being here, Steve. I appreciate it.
Yep, my best to Madeline again, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Walt. Steve, so we have a couple more questions if we can. So one of them was from Nancy. Nancy was asking, but then I lost it, of course. Buggers. Oh, can you go over what indication will show recovery?
What I watch, because it's a great indicator of housing recovery, is the showing index. Yeah, showing. There's a company called Showing Time. And they publish, you can look at like 44, 43 states. You can look at every one of them, and now it's a statewide, right? But my guess is that you now have, I think, hasn't San Francisco joined in the data share of a number of MLSs in Northern California?
Yes, clear cooperation.
Right. Well, no, I mean, actually, if I belong to San Francisco, I can also get access to MLS listings but it doesn't matter. I would bet the San Francisco, the MLS in town will have some data about showings. That's what I look at. And by the way, I'll give you an idea. Hold on just 1 second, and while I'm sitting here, let me give you, this is California, right? Not just San Francisco, but this is the Showing Time Index, national, and California. So to give you an example, California, this is 2020 versus 2019. On March 11th, the 2 years were right together. By March 30th, 2020 was almost 70% below. No, actually it was almost 100% below the same date a year ago. Almost. Okay, so but say March 30th, 70% below the benchmark from a year ago. And now it's 4% above. Now, 4% above the normal benchmark, but it's still 35% below where it was a year ago. But I mean, this line has been going up, and it's still going up, by the way. It's still rising. So that would be if I'm an agent, that's first indicator I would look at, is that one.
Steve, to piggyback on that, Patricia has another question, and it says, how about the consumer trends, like list price or transparency, as a buyer or as a seller right now?
I mean, the consumer has access to virtually all the information an agent does in terms of listings and prices and sales once they're recorded. So I mean, the funny part is that, 20 years ago, the industry feared the internet because of the transparency of pricing information and inventory information, because we thought, well, if they have access to that, they won't use us anymore. But yet usage is at a 20-year high. So it's not access to information. The consumer loves that stuff, some more than others, but they understand that to actually complete a transaction to buy or sell a home, they're almost nutcases if they don't use a good agent. Now, somebody asked a question a little bit about commission rates. I will tell you, we've studied it for almost 30 years now at Real Trends. We're the guys who publish the national average commission rates. I mean, the government depends on us for this data nationally. We find an interesting correlation. The more realtors there are compared to the number of listings there are, the lower the commission rate will be. When there's a surge in agents and a decline in listings, it means we have more agents competing for fewer listings, and one of the ways they compete is on pricing. We also know, because we rank the top 2,000 brokers or 1,700 brokers in the country and the top 15,000 agents and teams, and we get a lot of data from those brokerage companies. We know that the average commission rate in high price areas is lower. Yours is likely to be a lower commission rate than ours is in Denver, because the average price of a home sold where you are is 2.5 to 3 times what ours is. So you look at agents. I get a $5 million listing. Will I be willing to lower my commission by 1/4 or 1/2 point to get a $2 million saleable property? Yeah, probably. I might consider it.
Thank you, Steve. I would like to say that we've had so many comments that this was the best webinar so far, and the conversation was very refreshing. We appreciate your time and your expertise, and thank you, everyone. And this is recorded, and it will be on our YouTube channel,
Yep.
SFAR. Thank you very much, Steve.
Yeah, my thanks to you, Juliet, and to all of you for taking the time to be with us today. And just remember, be safe and healthy, okay? Thanks.
Thank you.